Hi, everyone. We are so happy today to have Professor Bruce Berndt to be with us today. And Professor Berndt is Professor Emeritus and the Machio Suzuki Distinguished Research Professor of Mathematics at the University of Illinois, Urbana, Champaign. He is a number theorist who is famous for his work on the mathematics of Ramanujan. He has spent over 40 years researching and studying Ramanujan work. He published over 200 papers, 15 books. Now, this 15 books, not including the books that he added. Many of these books are on the life and works of Ramanujan. In particular, he, as a single author, added Ramanujan's earlier notebooks published by Springer in 5 volumes between 1985 to 1998. Now, later with George Andrews, they added the Lost Notebook and published also by Springer in 5 volumes between 2005 and 2018. Now, he received many awards and recognitions now for his work, including the Steele Prize from the American Mathematical Society in 1996, and also later the Helmut Lester Alford Award from the Mathematical Associations of America in two occasions. One in 1989, the other one was in 1994. He was also named a fellow of the AMS in 2012, and he also received an honorary doctorate from Satras University in India in 2012. For our audience, we will have a webpage linked to this interview. And so our audience, you can find more information about the achievement of Professor Berndt. And Professor Berndt, is so great to be able to talk with you today. Very exciting to be able to have you. Oh, by the way, I noticed that you have a very nice tie for this.
This was given to me by George Andrews and my 80th birthday, if I recall correctly. I think I have only the second tie of this type. The first one was given to George by his son. And maybe George has given other copies, but as far as I know, he and I have the only ties at this time.
Wow.
So it's a beautiful tie with,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see, with Ramanujan all the way down and back of the tie. So.
Right, that is very special. That's very special. Thank you for wearing this tie for our interview today. Professor Berndt, we want to start with your childhood. Now, in a wonderful article, your hit parade, the top 10 most fascinating formulas in Ramanujan and Lost Notebook, an article you wrote with George Andrews, which appeared in the notice of AMS in 2008. Now, in that article, you briefly mentioned some interesting facts about your growing up in Michigan. Would you like to start with by telling us something more about your childhood and how did you become interested in mathematics?
Well, I was born in St. Joseph, Michigan, which is about 25 to 30 miles north of the Indiana border and is actually on Lake Michigan.
Oh.
I actually lived in Stevensville, which is about 6 miles south of St. Joe. My parents had a farm in Stevensville.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very tumultuous childhood. At the age of 2 or slightly before 2, I became very sick and weak, and I was hospitalized for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And in particular, the doctors noticed that my eyes became crossed. So when I got a little bit better, they tested my eyes by holding various playing cards at different distances from my eyes
Oh,
to
okay.
identify. So why did they, put, playing cards at various distances? Well, all throughout my childhood, on Sunday evenings, families met at my grandmother's home, and the women
Mm,
would talk on one side of the room, and the men would play cards on the other side of the room. Now,
wow.
we were in one room because my grandmother did not have central heating. Well, she lived in the kitchen and in this one room with one of her children. So
Right.
I would always sit between my father and Uncle Vic. So as soon as I was able to sit by myself, I watched them play cards every Sunday evening.
Oh, okay.
So the first words that I ever learned were Jack of Hearts, Ten of Spades, etc. So, there were other occasions in my childhood which were also full of turmoil. My parents had three cows, and we
Hmm.
drank the milk from their cows, and I got very sick on one occasion, and the
Wow.
cows had gotten some disease, so my father had
Oh,
to kill the cows. But
oh.
fortunately, I recovered. Another time, I almost drowned in Lake Michigan at the age of 4.
Oh, wow.
And at the age of 6, I got hit by a car and was seriously injured.
Wow.
So I had a very rough childhood. I went to just a country school that had 2 rooms,
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten through
Mm-hmm.
4th grade in one room and 5th grade through 8th grade in another. Um, it wasn't a great education, especially between my 5th and 7th grades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in the 8th grade, my parents wanted me to be confirmed in the Lutheran church, so they formed a carpool with my sister, and I had 2 second cousins
Mm-hmm.
to take
Mm-hmm.
me back and forth to a Lutheran school. And
Mm-hmm.
there, the education was much better, and for the first time in my life,
Oh, I see.
homework back. I never had any homework for the first 8 years of my
Oh, really? Okay.
education. So, yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, that sort of summarizes my life through my 8th grade. But I can continue on if you wish. But
Oh, yeah, please, please. Especially why
okay.
now? Why would you later become, find out that you like math,
Well, I had good start with numbers. So in high school, I went to St. Joseph High School, which is a better and bigger high school than Stevensville.
Uh-huh.
And I had a very good education at St. Joe. So actually, um, an unfortunate event happened with my family, which actually turned out to be good for me. So as I indicated, my parents were farmers
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
fruit farmers. And so on our farm, we raised black raspberries, sour cherries, sweet cherries,
Mm-hmm.
grapes,
Mm-hmm.
peaches, for example. And if there's a late frost, then all the buds are killed. So we had 2 years in a row with a late frost.
Oh.
So our family was really hit financially. And so my dad took a job with Whirlpool Corporation.
Mm.
So he would farm until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and then take a shift from 3:30 to midnight
Wow. Wow.
at Whirlpool. So in fact, during my senior year, and then during my senior year, he was laid off
Wow.
from uh, his job. So Whirlpool had a scholarship for children of employees, in particular those who just worked on the line and so I was very fortunate. I applied and received this scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a wonderful scholarship, paid $1,000 a year, which was a lot in those days.
Right, 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 right.
And so, and then because I got this scholarship, I got to know a few people at Whirlpool. So I asked them if I could get a job in their laboratories. So they gave me a job in the laboratories, which I had in the summer. So with the money I earned on my summer job and my scholarship, I was actually able to pay for my entire college education.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So what kind of lab works? What kind of work did you do in the lab?
So we just tested out so the washers, clothes washers and dryers.
I
So this
see.
is what was made there, and we would,
Of course.
you know, test various, kinds and equipment, and on the washers and dryers, to get the best product, so to speak. Mhm.
I see. I see. So you got wow, you earn all the money with scholarship and work, and then you went on to Albion College, a private liberal art college in Michigan.
Right.
Were you the first one in your family going to college?
Yes, I was the first. Yeah.
I see. I see. So how did you, become a math major? Now you work in a lab with Whirlpool. Maybe you're interested in engineering, but why math?
Well, actually, when I was in high school, I went to my physics teacher and I said I was actually interested in physics. And then he
Oh,
said, "Oh, you'll become an engineer." And I
I
didn't want
see.
to become an engineer. So anyway, when I went to college, I started off majoring in physics. But
I
after
see.
1 year, I had two friends who were much better at physics than I was. And then I also decided I really liked math better than physics. So I decided at the end of my first year that I would major in math. So it was
Wow.
a good choice. My two
Yes.
friends eventually went on and got PhDs in physics. So, they were pretty good at physics.
Wow, wow. Well, that's wonderful. And when you were an undergraduate student at Albion College, you were also involved in undergraduate research, and you actually published your results in an article titled "Graphical Integration" in 1961 in the Pentagon, a math magazine for students. And you were also among a selected group of students being invited to give a talk on your work. And would you like to elaborate that experience and how did you get involved in undergraduate research? Why graphical integration?
Well, I don't remember exactly, but at Albion College, we did not have a lot of courses in mathematics. I mean, I took them all, and I took most of them from Dr. Keith Moore.
Mm.
And he was a strong influence on my life. He was a wonderful
Oh,
teacher and was the type of person that I would like to be.
I
So
see.
that certainly cemented my interest
Mm.
in mathematics. So I think in my senior year, I had taken about all the courses, maybe except one. And by the way, I continued on with physics and took all the physics courses I could as well.
Okay. Well,
So I
that's
had an
wonderful.
extra, some time in my senior year. So Dr. Moore suggested I might look at the literature and pick a topic. So I went to some undergraduate journals and I saw that, oh, here are some nice ways of approximating integrals. And so I decided, well, I'll, discuss, I'll study that. But I really didn't, as far as I know, have any original results myself. It was a matter of searching the literature, and this is mainly what I did, and
Mhm.
brought it all together in an expository article. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And then afterwards, after you graduate, you went on to the University of Wisconsin-Madison to
Mhm.
pursue a PhD, and you decided to focus on number theory.
Mhm.
And to the non-math audience of this video, now how would you briefly describe what number theory is?
Mhm. Well, I actually didn't get into number theory very early. I might
Hmm.
mention that when I applied for graduate school, I applied at Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, and Wisconsin. And I was rejected at Michigan and Illinois. But as you know, I got even with Illinois. So anyway, I chose Wisconsin over Purdue then.
Mhm, mhm,
And
mhm.
I had no number theory up at that point, up till my graduate work. We didn't have a course in number theory as an undergraduate.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm.
So I started off thinking I would major in ordinary differential equations.
Oh, okay.
But then I changed my mind and I thought I would major in complex analysis.
Mm-hmm,
And then in my second semester, my third year, I was told that modular forms had a lot of complex analysis in it. So
mm-hmm,
I took a
mm-hmm.
course in modular forms taught by Rod Smart, and I really liked it a lot. And so I
Mm-hmm,
asked Smart to be my advisor.
mm-hmm,
And then in the following semester, in the fall semester of my fourth year, Marvin Knopp taught a course on modular forms with applications to number theory. So that was a wonderful course as well.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Marvin Knopp sort of became my, another father figure for me. So
Right,
both of them
right,
were
right.
very important in my life. And
Eh,
Marvin Knopp was former student of Paul Bateman at Illinois,
mm-hmm.
and he strongly urged me to apply at the University of Illinois after I finished my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't interested in coming to a large university at all.
I see.
And so I made this application only because he asked me to
Right,
apply
right,
here. I didn't
right.
want to hurt his feelings because I was mainly interested in going to a small college, you know,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
like from which, Albion College, from which I
mm-hmm,
graduated.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess your undergraduate experience sort of, shape, at that point, how you want yourself to be,
Definitely, yes.
right, right. And
So
I'm guessing that your initial, you initially want to study, differential equation. Was that because of your physics background?
yeah, I just liked my course in differential equation as an undergraduate, and we didn't actually have complex analysis as an
I see.
undergraduate. And
I see.
so I didn't really have that many choices, mostly in analysis and algebra.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But anyway, you end up doing number theory, and it looks like that set you on the path leading you to your exploration in the mathematics of Ramanujan, and what would you say to that?
So I never heard of Ramanujan until Marvin Knopp's course.
I see.
So there we actually did study the congruences for Ramanujan's partition function. And although we didn't actually use the Hardy Ramanujan circle method, I remember hearing about it in the course. So
Mm-hmm,
that was the first time I ever heard of Ramanujan.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow. So you and you start off of never heard of Ramanujan, and then you eventually start a journey of setting basically a significant a large portion of your life studying his mathematics. Now, in fact, I have heard, I know you have talked about this, in many interviews, which is a crucial part of your journey in understanding and researching the mathematics of Ramanujan. And now, for our audience, would you like to briefly talk about how you? Now, you just talk about you. This is that was your first time being introduced to Ramanujans, and how what happened that makes you to decide to devote all your time in research in the work of Ramanujan?
Well, it actually started on my 1 year postdoctoral year at the University of Glasgow. There, my mentor was Robert Rankin. So
Mm-hmm.
Rankin was the last, excuse me, the last PhD student of G.H. Hardy,
Right,
and had a lifelong interest in Ramanujan.
right.
So I remember in his office one day, we started talking about Ramanujan. I mean, he started the conversation, and he said to me, "I have a
Mm-hmm.
copy of Ramanujan's notebooks in my office. and I'll be glad to loan it to you if you wish. And I
Hmm.
told him I wasn't interested at all.
Oh.
And then this was during the time that Rankin was taking trips to Birmingham to
Oh.
sort through all the papers in which he eventually found Ramanujan's lost notebook.
Oh, okay.
But I don't recall that we ever discussed this, during my conversation in his office, in which we talked about Ramanujan one day.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that
Hmm.
was the first I ever heard about Ramanujan's notebooks. So I think it was in February 1967.
Hmm.
I got a letter from Paul Bateman, uh, offering me an assistant professorship at the University of Illinois.
Hmm.
I had completely forgotten that I had actually applied at the University of Illinois. So during my last year at Wisconsin, I actually interviewed at, I think, about 4 or 5 small colleges. And I received offers from a couple of them, but I wasn't
Hmm.
really happy with going to these colleges. In particular, at one of them, I would have to teach a required course that every student had to take, whether that person was in, mathematics or home economics or,
Hmm.
history or anything. So I just didn't see myself, teaching the same course every semester.
I
So
see.
so I had to, I wasn't really happy for either one. So I said, well, I'll accept this, offer from Paul Bateman and teach at the University of Illinois for 2 or 3 years. And then, I'll be ready to go to a small college and I'll be able to pick a good one. But as it turned out, a few years turned out to be 52 years. Anyway.
That's very, very interesting. And um and so what was the things that lead to you decided to spend all your time, devote all your time in researching the mathematics of Ramanujan?
Well, yeah, it started at Illinois. Let me just mention that a key happening or event really helped me stay at Illinois. So that was, I think, in about my third year,
Oh,
Ron Evans asked me to be his advisor.
right, right,
And I
right.
was really surprised because I just assumed that he would ask Paul Bateman to be his advisor because
Hmm.
Bateman was very, very well known, excellent
Right.
number theorist. So Ron Evans was a marvelous student, very creative. So it was just a huge joy to be his advisor. So I
Hmm.
really owe a lot to Ron Evans. And, but then again, it was about my I think about my third year that Paul Bateman asked me to referee 2 papers of Emil Grosswald. As head of the
Hmm.
department, he didn't have time to referee these papers, so he just
Hmm.
gave them to me to referee. So in these 2 papers, Grosswald proved some formulas from Ramanujan's notebooks. And so I accepted the papers, but I didn't really think anything, more about the papers
Hmm.
until my sabbatical year, which was at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton.
Right.
So one day in February of 1974, if I recall correctly, I was doing research on transformation formulas for generalized Eisenstein series,
Hmm.
and I suddenly realized that these uh, formulas that Emil Grosswald had proved, I could really prove myself using the work I was doing.
Hmm.
So that was a great revelation for me that I could prove all these formulas
Hmm.
that Grosswald had proved. And so the Institute did not have the Tata Institute's publication of the notebooks that Rankin had told
Oh,
me about, but the Princeton University Library did.
I see.
I checked them out of the Princeton University Library, and I saw all these wonderful formulas that I didn't know how to prove. So it was just marvelous. So when I returned to the University of Illinois, next fall, first thing I did was to write the Tata Institute, and you can get a copy of these notebooks.
Oh, okay.
So, um,
Okay.
so it was a wonderful financial investment. Uh,
Right.
for $25, I got these notebooks and included shipping in a wooden case.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For $25, you're getting over 3,000 theorems. That's a huge bargain. I mean,
Exactly, exactly. And you spend the next 20 years working on them.
right. So when
Wow.
I got home, I didn't start the notebooks right away. I think I was doing other things. So I think it was in May of 1975. So that would have been after 1 year being back at Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
I just said to myself, let's try to prove everything in chapter 14 of the second notebook.
Mm.
So the reason I chose that was because this is the chapter from which Grosswald had proved the
I
formula.
see. I see.
So
Right,
I had
right,
a head
right.
start. So
Right.
and then I worked on this for over a year, and Ron Evans was a big help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there were 87 results altogether. So after a little over a year with Ron's help, we managed to prove everything
Wow.
in
Wow.
chapter 14.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. I think Ron was your first
Right,
PhD student, right?
right. Yeah,
Right, right. Wow. Just, when you look at those original, notebook, the cut photocopies of the notebooks, I have to admit that, the handwriting is not, it's not the easiest kind of handwriting you can look at for formulas.
and most of the things are you can make out. There were a few results that I had trouble, deciphering, making them out.
Right. And these are the notebooks that eventually it becomes the content and the focus of your
Mhm.
5 books published between 1985 and 1998 by Springer, the 5 volumes of Ramanujan notebooks, and the book series it is a classic now in mathematics. And now here are some questions about your experience in this, long journey of writing, this 5 books by yourself. You're a single author on that. Um, what were the biggest challenges of writing these 5 books? And was there a particular volume that was the hardest to write?
Mhm. Well, let me say that I actually didn't plan to do anything more
Oh,
after doing right of examining chapter 14. But then, in fact, George Andrews reminded me where it was. Um, After George Andrews discovered the lost notebook at Trinity College, Cambridge,
mm-hmm.
spring of 1976, he told me, I think this was at a meeting, an AMS meeting in Miami University in Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I first thought it was on a visit to Illinois' campus, but then when I sort of reviewed when he was at Illinois, I decided that he was correct. It was at a meeting in Miami of Ohio. And he told me that when he discovered the lost notebook, he also noticed that the notes that G.N. Watson and B.M. Wilson had
Right.
accumulated in their efforts to edit the notebooks in the late 1930s or 20s and 30s
Mm-hmm.
had been preserved at Trinity College. So I decided, well, if I had their notes, maybe I could, edit further chapters. So I wrote for a copy of their notes, and very kindly the librarian who made a photocopy of all these notes and sent it to me.
Wow.
So then I went back to the beginning of the second notebook, actually chapter 2, because the first notebook had to do with magic squares, and I could edit that without any help, so to speak, because it was
Mm-hmm.
elementary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then I just, started with chapter 2 and just worked my way through the notebooks.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the first several chapters, Wilson and Watson had done a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a lot, my graduate students helped me enormously.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
many of my graduate students worked on problems with me from the notebooks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm very, so it wasn't, my solely my work at all. I mean, Watson and Wilson's notes were enormous help, and then my graduate students were enormous help as well. So,
Right, right, right. Your
so
student, yeah, that and Wilson and Watson, they've spent quite some time trying to edit the notebooks, but they eventually they decided to just give it up, or stop,
well, what happened was that um, Hardy didn't assemble Ramanujan's papers for publication until
Mm-hmm,
7 years after Ramanujan died. So his collected papers were published in 1927.
mm-hmm,
Ramanujan
mm-hmm,
died in 1920. And if you look carefully at the title page,
mm-hmm,
there are three editors. Hardy, P.V. Seshu Iyer, who was Ramanujan's teacher in the 1 year of college he had at Kumbakonam,
mm-hmm,
and then
mm-hmm,
B.M. Wilson. And if you look
mm-hmm.
carefully, you will see that B.M. Wilson's name is in slightly larger print.
Oh,
It's clear, I've never seen edit a group of papers with one author or editor in a larger print.
right, right, right.
Took me many years to see this. And so I think Hardy had Wilson's name in larger print because he really did all the work in assembling the papers together and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
getting
mm-hmm.
them printed.
I
So
see.
shortly after that, Wilson started to edit the notebooks, beginning with chapter 2 of the second notebook, and worked on this for about 5 years. But then he went to the hospital for routine surgery and got an infection and died.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Then
mm-hmm.
Watson started working on the notebook sometime in the late 1920s, but he did a lot of work, but his interest died maybe in the mid 1930s, and so the work never got completed. And,
Right, right, right. And for you, like it took you like 20 years to go to go over, these couple notebooks, 20 years, that's a long time. And in fact, for working on such a long project that spends such a long time, how do you manage your time efficiently in such a duration? What's the secret?
well, I probably spent more hours on mathematics than most people do. So in the evenings, some people watch television or something. I just worked on mathematics, in particular Ramanujan's notebooks. So generally every evening, between say 7:38 and 11:30, I do mathematics, and so uh, I did put in a lot of work. I mean, I did other things as well. We have three children, and I
Right.
coached my son's soccer team, for example. So, and we
Right,
went,
right.
you know, and we
Yeah,
enjoy music, and so we went to concerts. So, yeah.
right, right. I talked with you earlier, and your every evening routine, is you have a very routine, time 8 to 11 is to work, and and you did it for like many years. Are you
Well,
still doing that?
that's that's absolutely correct. So at about the age of 6, I started working, all day in the summer. First picking black raspberries, then sour cherries, then we went on to peaches, and great grapes were the last fruit that we harvested. So yeah, almost every summer day I worked 8, 10 hours in the field, on picking fruit. So And my dad had a very strong work ethic as well.
Mm, mhm, mhm,
As
mhm,
I indicated, trying to farm and
mhm.
having a 40-hour work
Right,
week
right, right, right,
whirlpool. Yeah.
right. He definitely had a very strong work ethics. Yep, and now you mentioned graduate student was and it was an major part of your you work with them
Mm.
to research on the mathematics of Ramanujan and now what's your secret of mentoring graduate students?
Well, I guess one thing is I enjoy it very much, and I would say that of all my experiences in mathematics, the most satisfying for me is advising graduate students.
Hmm,
So,
that's right.
altogether, I advised 37 graduate students, and
Hmm.
yeah, many of them worked on Ramanujan's notebooks with
Hmm.
me. And then when I started working with George Andrews on the Lost Notebook, uh, a number of students also worked with me. And
Hmm.
I supervised a postdoc, Azai,
Hmm.
2000 to
Hmm.
2003, and she worked with me on several problems in Ramanujan's Lost Notebook.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm thinking for for a new graduate student, working if he or she decided to work in mathematics in Ramanu related or discovered by Ramanujans, it could be quite intimidating because wow, it looks like there are already a couple his do I have to read all his notebooks in order to try to figure out what he's trying to say
Well, there are, a lot of topics in the notebooks, and so one has some choices, although really, when students started to work with me, it was what we were working on,
Mm,
at that point in the notebooks. But actually, another help was our number theory seminar.
mhm,
So
mhm,
I've had a lot of number theorists at the University of Illinois, and
mhm, mhm,
we had a seminar twice a week. So I spoke on at the seminar many times, as did my colleagues, for example, Harold Diamond, Halberstam. And so, graduate students learned of my interest in the notebooks, partly or maybe chiefly
mhm,
through the
mhm,
seminar,
mhm,
the talks that
mhm.
I gave there. So,
Right, right. You work
so,
with them on the things that you were working on, and so they be a
yeah,
part of
mostly,
that.
yes, that's correct. But uh, but I mean, they prove the theorems by themselves. I
Of
mean,
course,
for the most part, yes. Yeah.
of course, of course. Now, since you have worked on these long-term projects, more than one, if someone is working on a long-term project like what you did, what would be your advice, tips to these individuals? What would you say to
Uh,
them?
well, don't take real long vacations during the summer. But anyway, uh, I think the main thing is to show your enthusiasm. I mean, I was greatly enthusiastic about these wonderful, theorems in Ramanujan's notebooks. So I think, but you would really have to ask my students this, you know, you know, it's a combination of Ramanujan's beautiful formulas and maybe my enthusiasm for Ramanujan's work. So probably some combination of these were the keys in, influencing Ramanujan,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
the work on
mm-hmm,
Ramanujan.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
That's
I
that's
don't
that's
have
good.
any, anything definite to say other than those two things.
But that enthusiasm and a strong work ethics, a very routine work habits. It is. I think these are the keys to allow you to be able to work on a project or projects like these of over like 20 40 years. That is really, really helpful. Really, really helpful. That's the kind of basic, but that's the ingredient. That's the main
That's right.
ingredient,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And after you wrote the 5 books on Ramanujan, his earlier notebooks, you also worked with George Andrews to write another 5 books
Mhm.
on Ramanujan's Lost Notebook, and also 5 volumes published between 2005 and 2018. Um, we hope that we could have a sequel of this a sequel of this interview on this remarkable achievement too. Now, technology has evolved significantly over the course of these two, monumental projects. And for example, computer algebra system, which you also use, to perform some complex calculation in some of the proofs in these notebooks, and also, the distribution channels have evolved, evolved a lot. When you start writing the notebook projects, the internet was still in its infancy,
Mm.
and now all your books can be accessed by anyone from anywhere in the world using a phone. And the world has changed quite a bit. So, how do you think the research in mathematics of Ramanujan will evolve in the next decades?
Well, first of all, I mean, the way I started to get involved in publishing my work on the notebooks, that scene would never take place today. So what happened was that um, uh, Walter Kaufman Buehler, who was an editor at
Mm-hmm,
Springer,
mm-hmm,
was visiting Halberstam, but so evidently Halberstam was, discussed with Walter Kaufman Buehler the work I was doing on the notebooks. So Halberstam called me in my office and he says, "I want you to come over to my office now." So I walked over to his office and he introduced me to Kaufman Buehler, and Kaufman Buehler says that, Professor Halberstam has been telling me about the work you were doing on the notebooks.
mm-hmm,
Would
mm-hmm.
you like to publish these in volumes with Springer? Have you ever considered that? And I said, no, I never thought about this at all. Yeah, I'll be glad to do this. And so that was it. I mean, he made the suggestion, and I thought it was a good suggestion. So that's how I began, my association with Springer on the notebooks. But that type of thing wouldn't be happen today at all. You wouldn't find someone really interested in mathematics like Walter Kaufman Buehler was, visiting, a professor, especially to talk about, volumes that he was editing. It wouldn't happen today, at all. So now, the publishers are more interested in making money and, not, not going out to search for good books or something. So
Right,
maybe
right,
I'm a
right.
bit prejudiced about that.
But time has changed quite a bit.
Yes,
Time
it
has
really
changed quite
has
a bit.
changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and back then when you started, even talking with strangers, there was no internet probably, or maybe
Yeah.
internet was just, it was still not going public at that point, and it's hard to imagine that by the time you finish all these notebooks, the lost notebooks, now you can use a small device to read it anywhere you like.
Yeah.
It's quite astonishing, and in fact, so many kids in the rest of the world, now they have access to,
Yeah.
to extremely high quality works like yours, which is quite a contrast with Ramanujan during his time, and today, this is why, we want to have this interview with you so that, you make such a great contribution in mathematics, and it's really, we really thank you for your time to talk with, to have this interview, to talk with the audience, interact, in record this interview so that, many people can have more insight into, someone who complete such monumental projects, over 40 years. And it's like, giving more context into, behind these, these books, these the making of these notebooks, and so we really thank you for your time, Professor Berndt. And
Very glad to talk with you. I'm always glad to talk with people about Ramanujan.
right. And so for our audience, we will be having a website linked to this interview, where you can find more resources about Professor Berndt and Ramanujan. And so well, thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.